Hey there, it's Kat and this is Brews and Reviews. Today I want to talk to you guys about my January wrap-up. So these are all the books that I read in January. So let's start this video off with a few stats. I read 9 physical books, 4 audiobooks and 1 ebook for a total of 14 books in January. So I'm quite happy with that. I was lucky enough to have no DNFs or 1 stars. I did, however, have 4 2-star books, so look forward to hearing about those. I read 1 3-star book, 7 4-star books, and 2 5-star books. So let's go through the books I read and I can tell you what I thought of them. So the first book that I read this year was 8th Confession by James Patterson with Maxine Petro. So, this book is the 8th book in the Women's Murder Club series. And this series follows a group of women who are in, crime jobs. So you've got a detective, you've got a reporter, you've got a DA, and you've got a medical examiner. And they're all mates, and they go and hang out at the bar together and, chat whilst also solving crime. So it's, kinda trash. But also, it's kind of fun, most of the time. Unfortunately, I did give this book a 2-star rating, because it wasn't good. So the problem I had with this book is that there is a lot going on. I understand that there are these 4 characters that we like to focus on, but I don't think they all need to have major storylines in each book, and a couple of the storylines felt a bit like, why do I care? They could have had a shorter storyline and it'd have been that's fine. I didn't really understand Yuki's storyline in this one. I had some major issues with that, which I will get onto in a second, but it just was so unnecessary to me, and I'm like, why? Why was it included? I did find the main storyline interesting, and the main sort of murders that were happening, I thought that was really interesting. There was also a side plot in Cindy's storyline, which I found really interesting as well. So those storylines definitely could have carried it. We did not need Yuki's storyline in this one. Now the other major problems that I had with this is that sometimes the writing is not good. And sometimes accents get written out in a way that seems a bit questionable. They don't need to be written phonetically. I just thought we were kind of more grown up than that, but okay. So another thing that really bothered me was that there is a character that's introduced in this book who has a potential love interest for one of the characters, and they reveal to that character that they are, I think, intersex and trans, and the character reacts in a not very pleasant way, which I didn't particularly enjoy reading about. But one of the other characters who's sat next to her at the bar says, oh, it's a good job you told them that you weren't interested because, by someone who might have potentially disgusted you. And I was like, I was really having a hard time with this book, and I personally couldn't get past that. Even though I enjoyed some of the major storylines, I was like, ugh. These are problematic things that are being included in here, and I don't like that. So I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Next up, we're on to my first 5-star rating of the month, and that was Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. Are you surprised? I'm surprised. I genuinely was not expecting to be giving this book a 5-star. Given my reactions to the 3 books that came before it, if you include the prequel, I was like, this is fine, I guess. I'm not really into it. It's not my fave. But then I got to this book, and I was very engrossed. So there are some new characters that are introduced and a more magical focus on the series, and I was way more into it. Who would have known witches, fae, magic makes this whole thing way more interesting. I really like Rowan, I really like Manon and Abraxos and that whole storyline. I was super into that. I can just say the only thing that I was not into was Kale's storyline, because it was just kind of boring. In the sense that all of these new things were being unlocked and I was really excited by them, and then any scene that went back to the Ardalan storyline, I was kind of a bit, do I care? Not really, let's go a bit faster. Honestly, I didn't really want to stop reading it, and I'm really pumped for the next one, although I am a little bit nervous because it involves the main character going back to Ardalan where there's no magic, and I'm like, but this was the thing that I really liked about this book, so wait, don't take the magic away from me, it just came! Anyway, yeah, I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars, and I was very surprised by that. So next up I read a graphic novel series. I reread the first book in the series so that I could read the second one, and that is Slam, which is a graphic novel series about roller derby, and look at these colours! These are such striking covers, and I love the art inside. I think it is very in your face and very pretty to look at. This one was actually gifted to me for Christmas by Stephanie from Stacks on Stacks on Stacks, and I am super excited to have read it because my rating for the first book actually improved on a reread, and I think that's because I know a little bit more about roller derby and I know a little bit more about skating. These were super fun. I really liked all of the different representation. Obviously, Derby is a place where there are people of all shapes and sizes, all ethnicities, all sexualities, and everyone just comes together and has fun. And maybe breaks a few bones, but like, only sometimes. Honestly, these are just really fun, and if you enjoy Derby in the slightest, then you should definitely pick Slam Up. And I gave both of these 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I picked up Ash by Melinda Lowe. This is a Cinderella retelling with a fae/LGBT twist to it. So, all of these things ringing alarm bells in my head of, you're gonna have a good time with this. And I wish I'd had a better time. I did enjoy this, and I found that there were aspects of it that I was really into. Unfortunately, it all felt a little bit surface level for me. It is very much a Cinderella retelling, except instead of falling for the prince, she meets the king's huntress, and they have some bonding time in the forest, and there's also a fae character who she has some bonding time with as well, and he's kind of a replacement for the fairy godmother, so it's a bit different. It just didn't go into enough detail for me. I didn't feel the connection as much as I wish I had, and I found that a little bit disappointing. So I feel like this is for like younger readers, maybe, if you wanted like an LGBT book that's, I mean, it's not middle grade, but it is way closer to that than YA feels. It feels on the level of something that you might read as a middle grade reader. Aside from one point, which I also didn't enjoy, there is quite an intense hunting scene where they like have dogs and they hunt down, was it a deer or something? And I've kind of blocked it out of my head because I'm vegetarian. I don't approve of hunting for sport, so I didn't particularly enjoy that aspect. I'm like, oh, if you were hunting for feeding yourselves because it was important, then I can get past that, but like, ugh, hunting for sport, not for me. Yeah, anyway, I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. I feel like it could have been more than it was, and I'm a little bit sad about that, but for what it was okay. After that, I read Want by Cindy Pon, and this was a book that I've had on my audio TBR for quite a while now. It's a young adult sci-fi book that is kind of a timely read, so I wouldn't suggest reading it if you are in any way feeling down about the world current situation. Because there is a flu that kills 80% of the people it comes into contact with, and there is a lot to do with global warming and air pollution and things like that. So that is really interesting side of the story, but it's also mixed in with a fun sci-fi future Taipei, and there is a lot of mixed languages, so some people will be speaking in English and then they'll switch to like Mandarin or something like that, and I found that really interesting because it's like a culture blend. Again, as with Ash, I did find this one a little bit surface level. I wanted it to go a little bit deeper, but I think it stayed very YA level, not delving into the deeper issues. Whilst it had already mentioned things like air pollution and people dying of this flu, I almost wanted it to go down a darker route because I thought all of these things are there, set up, but it kind of stayed at a, let's not go too deep into like the fact that loads of people are dying. It sort of glossed over them a little bit while still mentioning them. It just wasn't as deep and heart-wrenching as I think I wanted it to be, and it had an end that was very traditional of a YA dystopian book, shall we say. I don't want to spoil it or anything, but I'm like, okay, fair enough, that's how it ended. I did end up giving it 4 out of 5 stars because I did really enjoy it. I was just like, it is what it is. The next 2 books I'm going to talk about together because they are books 2 and 3 in the Rift War saga. So this is the continuation to Magician, which I read last year. So I read Silverthorne and A Darkness of Sethanon. No, A Darkness at Sethanon. I don't know why I keep saying of Sethanon, so if I keep saying it, I'm gonna say it. I was actually kind of surprised by how much I enjoyed these books. After reading the first book, I wasn't really sure where the second was gonna go because I didn't see sort of a natural progression point. It definitely tied things off semi-neatly. However, I did really enjoy the start of Silverthorne. It kind of was a little bit Sleeping Beauty, gotta go and on a quest to save the princess, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm with you, let's go on this quest. And I really enjoyed the way that certain characters developed things. I really enjoyed Jimmy the Hand as a character. I got really into his perspective. I think Silverthorne had sort of a fun adventure vibe with some serious tones leading into the third one, where it was like, oh, the big battle is coming, ah. And the big battle did come. I did enjoy some of the battles that took place in A Darkness of Sethanon. The only downside there is that it did feel a little bit of its time, in the sense that, you know when people read Lord of the Rings and they're like, we must have a big attack on a fort at the end of the third book. We're in the middle, somewhere. There must be a big fort attack, or like a castle attack or something like that. Felt a little bit like that. I got really invested in Pug's storyline towards the end, and all of like the magic and the traveling through time / dimensions and all of that sort of thing. That was really cool. But yeah, I thought I moved along really quickly, really well, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I gave both of them 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I picked up The Thing from Another World Omnibus. So this was an ebook collection of graphic novels. I think there's 4 different graphic novels, and they sort of postulate what would happen after the Thing films. You know, John Carpenter's 1982 The Thing, which is one of my favourite films. I love that film. I think it's brilliant, and I really love like the isolation aspect. I really love that they're in the Antarctic, they can't go anywhere, and once the Thing is with them, they shouldn't go anywhere because it could be the end of humanity. And I really, really love that. So I was really intrigued when I saw these graphic novels, and I thought, what would happen next? I really wish I hadn't bothered, to be honest with you. This may be a slight spoiler for this graphic novel. I don't think they're particularly popular. I don't think many people are bothered about reading them, and you know, we're just gonna go with it. The things that I really enjoyed about The Thing, the film, was that they're stranded. The whole point is the creature can't go anywhere because there is no life on Antarctica, and it makes a lot of sense. But at some point in the first graphic novel, the Thing ends up in the sea, where the fish are, where a fish finds the Thing. The Thing gets off of Antarctica. The Thing will destroy the world. Literally no point reading any of the rest of it. You can run around any like South American country like they seem to in this, and it's like, no, it would already be in like 10 million insects, it would be in that monkey over there, it would be in that bird over there. No, world done. The end. It was kind of just pointless, and I'm like, well, had you remained in Antarctica, this would have made way more sense, and kind of just been a repeat of The Thing, really. But I would have been there for that. I just feel like it abandoned the whole, the world will be over if it escapes Antarctica, because it wanted it to attack people in a non-snow setting, and I got really annoyed by that. Yeah, so I actually give that one 2 out of 5 stars. The art in the first one was great. So I'm going to talk about the next 2 books together, because I finished another series, sort of. I finished the first trilogy in a wider series, so I'm counting it as a series, sort of. So the books that I read were Magic Study and Fire Study by Maria V. Schneider. So if you want to hear my actual thoughts on these 2 books, then do go and check out the chilled reading vlog that I did recently, because I'm reading both of these books in that, and I give more detailed thoughts about them. And since this video is already probably way too long, I'm going to sort of loosely talk about these. These books are about Yelena as she develops magical abilities. I will say there are trigger warnings for rape and torture, like abduction in a serial killer-y type way. But I did find it really interesting. I was really surprised by how much I liked this series, because I thought that Poison Study was interesting, but it didn't really do it for me. And then when I got into these ones, I was actually pleasantly surprised that it didn't go down the route that I thought it was going to go down, because this one's called Magic Study, and I thought it was going to be a magic school, but it kind of wasn't. It was more like a hunt for the serial killer book. So that was kind of interesting. Also, I love Yelena and Valak, and you know what, I won't be swayed on that. I just love them. I really like their relationship. I gave Magic Study 5 out of 5 stars, and I gave Fire Study 4 out of 5 stars, because the first 200 pages were a bit boring, but you know, it got better. Next up, I spur of the moment decided I was going to pick up Blue Lily Lily Blue, which is definitely a tongue twister, and I know it's meant to be, but like, if I spoke less quickly, then, you know, that would be less hard to say. Anyway, Blue Lily, Lily Blue by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the 3rd book in the Raven Cycle, and usually I've been like, I need to be in a specific mood to read a Raven Cycle book, but I was kind of like, just pick it up, just read it. And I did. And I actually really enjoyed this one. I liked that the main storyline seemed to progress so much in this one. They actually got somewhere on their quest, whereas I feel like the last book paused. And I'm not complaining, because I really enjoyed that book, but I feel like this one got it more back on track, and I like the different characters and how they sort of evolved in this one. Also, I dropped a big book on it and creased the cover. So there's like a big decrease here, and I'm really sad about it. But anyway, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. And now we're on to the last 2 disappointments of this month. Yes, disappointments. I gave both of these books that I'm going to talk about 2 out of 5 stars, but I don't really want to talk about them that much because... So the next book I'm going to talk about is The Ritual by Adam Neville. I vaguely knew of this book because of the film. I haven't watched the film, but I've seen some clips from it, and I thought, well, this sounds like it could be really interesting, and it sounded like it could be really interesting, but it wasn't. It was full of asshole characters that were not prepared for their environment, and yelled at each other, punched each other, and were just generally just horrible the whole way through. Now, I don't hate books with horrible characters, but just like, no. So this book is about 4 estranged friends that meet up to go on a hiking holiday in Norway, despite the fact that 2 of them aren't hikers, they don't go for walks, and they are continuously described as fat, which, great, love that. And then one of the other characters, the main character, gets really angry at them for not being as good at hiking, and like has a fist fight with them and like punches them, and he's just generally a horrible person, and that's like the first half of the book, and then they get hunted by a monster. Sorry, that was the only good thing about this, was the monster. And then the second half of the book is like asshole Norwegian musicians in a cabin trying to kill people. It was just rubbish. I can't recommend this book. Don't pick it up. It was naff. So the last book that I picked up this month was 55 by James Delargy, and this was one I was really looking forward to and I was very disappointed by. So the premise of this book is that a guy comes into the police station in West Australia and he's like, oh my god, I've just escaped a serial killer. He said I was number 55. Help me, help me. So the police chief puts him up in a hotel because that's the only place they've got for him to stay in. And then he goes back to the station, where another guy comes in and says, oh my god, help me, I've just escaped from a serial killer. He said I'm number 55, help me. And he gives the exact same story, except he says that the other guy is the serial killer. So they put him in jail, and then they have to try and find the other guy who has disappeared. So that sounds like a really interesting premise. And I was like, yeah, okay. But then the plot happened. So the main character is sort of taken over by this other guy who used to be his partner, and he went off to Perth to become a sergeant, and he is so far up his own arsehole that he cannot see the sun. He's such a dick throughout the whole thing. He is like, I will assert my dominance. He also has hooked up with the main character's ex-wife, which I predicted that shit really early on, and they're trying to take his kids away. Now, all of that is like, okay, bit annoying, but if the main story was good, it could still make a 3 stars, right? But the end of this book is the biggest middle finger, so middle fingery that it reminded me of the ending of The Mist. You know, the film The Mist? If you know the end of that film, you know what I'm talking about. I am so mad about this that I'm gonna spoil the ending of this book for you guys right here. I will hold my hand up so that you know when to come back or start listening to me if you ever want to read this book. But I'm so mad. So mad. Okay, so the thing that happened is that the killer was doing something for a particular reason. I won't spoil that bit, but he ends up kidnapping the main character's daughter and son and hides them away somewhere in the Australian desert. And then he says, if you give me the other guy, then I'll give you your children back. If you don't, I'll kill them. So the main character comes up with a plan, and he's like, okay, here, you can have this guy, but he's not really gonna give him the guy. Anyway, Dickface McAssholison, the ex-partner guy, shoots the killer before he can tell him where the kids are. So they don't know where the children are. So 4 days later, 4 days, these are under 12 children, they go on this look for these kids, and they eventually come across these shacks. The main character opens a shack and he's like, oh, they're not in here. And the other guy opens a shack and he's like, Chandler, you should look at this. And he's like horrified, and then it's like the main character walks towards the light and it doesn't even tell you if the kids are dead. Which they most certainly are, but also like, fuck you! Why was that necessary? Why was that even a thing? I don't understand. Anyway, so that was why I did not like that book. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars and I'm pissed at the ending. So those are the books that I read in January, and I enjoyed a fair few of them, and I was only annoyed by some of them. Did you have any particularly irritating endings in any books that you read in January? Or were you satisfied with all of your endings? I hope that you were. So if you made it this far into the video, leave me a stack of books emoji. I would love that. Also, if you don't want to comment anything else, then it just lets me know that you're here, so that would be nice. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!